Ooh, I forgot about the insane Tucker Carlson guest, apparently. Daryl Cooper may be the best and most honest popular historian in the United States. His latest project is the most forbidden of all, trying to understand World War II. Uh-oh. Now, when I hear that from the likes of Tucker Carlson, uh-oh is the first thing I think of. Because, like, trying to understand World War II is not the most forbidden. So many scholars have covered it. Like, so many scholars. There are entire fields of study dedicated to the Holocaust, for example. So when someone says, ooh, the forbidden truths of World War II, it's like, what are the forbidden truths of World War II? One of the most studied wars. Uh-oh. Oh, that's awesome. I wonder what those hidden truths are, Tucker. So I don't really know what this conversation is about, but I can guess, which Elon Musk responded with, very interesting, worth watching. Elon Musk deleted his tweet saying a podcast with Tucker Carlson and Daryl Cooper offering excusatory narrative for Nazis calling, while Winston Churchill, the chief villain of World War II, was very interesting, worth watching. So here's the thing. I hate Winston Churchill, and he was straight up a Nazi himself, but for like Indians, right? And also every other brown person. But having said that, I still wouldn't call him the chief villain of World War II. Oh, and the Irish too for Churchill. You're right. Obviously, there was a lot of bad guys who happened to be on the right side of history during World War II. But there was one big bad guy who was just worse than them all. His name, Adolf Hitler. This was Tucker's guess. He's legit just a Nazi. It's insane. Time for a Churchill thread. Time for a Churchill thread. Let's do this. I know that sounds like hyperbole. Churchill didn't order the most deaths, oversee the most atrocities, or commit the worst crimes. But most of the crimes he could not have been committed if the war had not happened. Is he talking about like the famine? He's not talking about that, right? Like there's no way a guy with an avatar like this gives a shit about like people in Bengal. He must be talking about some other shit. The blockade of Germany. I know that sounds like hyperbole. Churchill didn't order the most deaths, oversee the most atrocities, or commit the worst crimes. Okay. You'll think, but Daryl, everyone knows that the war started after Germany invaded Poland, Austria, Czechoslovakia before that. It could have been prevented if only people had listened to Churchill and had taken a tougher line against Hitler. And you might be right, sort of. Let's rewind the clock to World War I. Churchill's the boss of the British Navy, and in 1915, he implements a hunger blockade of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Over the course of the war, up to 750,000 Germans die of starvation. Immediately context note says Churchill was not responsible for the blockade. Policy was established in Whitehall Conference in 1905. The decision was made by UK Prime Minister, joined by France, Italy. Post-war, Churchill opposed the harsh treatment of Germany. So a lot of people don't understand. Churchill is like not a good guy, just not in the way that this guy is presenting. The blockade, wrote Churchill, treated the whole of Germany as if it were a beleaguered fortress and avowedly sought to starve the whole population, men, women, wounded into submission. That's all you say, but war is hell. Okay, skipping this stuff. In 1920, and Britain is busy pacifying Iraqi tribes, Churchill insists the RAF must proceed with work on gas bombs, especially mustard gas, which would inflict punishment on recalcitrant natives. I am strongly in favor of using poison gas against uncivilized tribes. Churchill authorized the use of tear gas, not mustard gas shells, by army units in Mesopotamia, and then approved their conversion to be dropped from aircraft. No gas weaponry were actually used in Mesopotamia. Okay, now context clues are defending Churchill. Like, this guy who is probably a Nazi, but like so was Churchill. This is the worst kind of like annoying liberal. Twitter is literally a Nazi fest in every direction. I swear to God. Those who are trying to defend Churchill and those who are trying to defend Adolf Hitler. One type of Nazi is obviously worse, but still, what's the general? I forget his name. The one that said we fought the wrong enemy in World War II or whatever. Like there's a lot of guys. Okay. Yeah. Patton. There's a lot of guys who were like, you know, this Hitler guy, he's got some good ideas. Okay. Yeah. I'm fighting him. But honestly, every neo-Nazi on Twitter, no, I'm not talking about like contemporary people. I'm talking about like people who directly were on the right side of history in World War II, but had the wrong opinions regardless. Guy who was surprised Tucker would do this. Didn't expect Tucker Carlson to become an outlet for Nazi apologetics, but here we are. What are you saying? When has Tucker Carlson not done Nazi apologetics? What are these people doing, bro? I mean, that's not even plausible deniability at that point. You're just like dumbass. Like you're openly a stupid person. Anyway, like Hitler, Churchill blamed Jews for communism and revolutions dating back to 1789, describing the Bolsheviks as a band of underworld Jews. No context notes on that one. I wonder why. I wonder why there's no context notes on Churchill's anti-Semitism. Who could say? Who could say why? Churchill's public attitude towards Hitler in Germany was openly hostile after 1938. Some have pointed out that he faced bankruptcy and a loss of his family estate when he was bailed out with a gift not a loan by a wealthy Zionist. If there's any direct evidence that Churchill was bought, though, I am not aware of it. What is going on in this thread? Oh, and there are many simpler explanations for his change of heart, given that the war faction of which he was seeking leadership became more prominent and belligerent after Hitler's annexations of Austria and Sudetenland. Also, Churchill had been a booster of Zionism for the last 20 years. Yeah, Churchill also, was Zionism a thing before Israel? Yes. You know who was the #1 advocate for Zionism, even like during and before Theodore Herzl? Christian Zionists, who were also deeply anti-Semitic. Balfour is one of those examples. Lord Balfour. Churchill is another example as well. The only people that Churchill hated more than Jews was, Arabs, Palestinians. So kind of worked out well for a lot of anti-Semitic, ultra-Zionist Christians, didn't it? Send the Jews to the desert, let God sort it out, let them duke it out with the Arab dogs over there, that sort of thing. Kind of not that different from literally Indians too. Churchill hated Indians. How could I forget? And the Irish, of course. He hated a lot of people. I'm just saying he was also anti-Semitic on top of that. Why is his legacy so clean? I don't know. Why is George W. Bush's legacy so clean? He's still alive. He hasn't even died. That's what we do. We love rewriting history and making it seem like, dude, most Americans probably don't even think about the fact that virtually not every single founding father, but a big chunk of our founding fathers were slave owners, dog. Why do you think nobody thinks about that? Like, what do you mean? In an October 6th speech, Hitler said he did not want war. Oh, never mind then. I guess Hitler said he did not want war. So I guess that's it then. Don't look at anything else afterwards. Yeah, but Hitler did not want war with Britain. So this is true. He definitely didn't want war with England. That's not wrong. Hitler tried again, going on the radio to broadcast a call for peace directly to the British people. He would give back parts of Poland that were not majority German. What? And would work. Wait, what? Why is there no context note on that? What the f? And would work with other powers to reach an acceptable solution to the Jewish problem. He was ignored. Okay, what is going on, dude? Okay, first of all, reach an acceptable solution to the Jewish problem? Dog, if you are writing that out as though, there was a Jewish problem, you're just welcome back Adolf Hitler. Like, what do you mean? What is going on? Benjamin Netanyahu wanted peace. He just wanted a solution to the Palestinian problem. Like, what? He wanted an acceptable solution to the Palestinian problem. Oh, got it. Okay. The reason why I'm making comparisons to Israel is, one, because obviously Israel has a lot of fascist Nazi style politics, but also because someone in the chat said this guy also did like a long and I guess well thought out like series on Israel. So once again, showcasing that like the smoke that you have for Israel, you don't have for Nazi Germany. So maybe the smoke that you have for Israel is not about like ethno-nationalist supremacist sentiment, but the fact that it's Jews that are doing it. You have a problem with, Jewish people that are doing it, and not necessarily like the principle of ethno-nationalist supremacist apartheid and genocide. This is why I always say like fascists, both Nazis, neo-Nazis who are anti-Semitic, and also fascists who are pro-Israel, sometimes Jewish, other times not Jewish, regardless of what their background is ethnically, religiously. They still have the same goals, just the enemies are different and the in-group is different, but the goals still remain the same. I have an issue with the goal of ethno-nationalist supremacist attitudes and ethnic cleansing. I don't care who's doing it. I don't care if it's like Jews doing it or Germans doing it for folk. I don't care who the enemies are in that situation as well. I just think that the framework is fraught and also is disastrous and incredibly bloody, because I'm an anti-fascist and not an anti-Semite. What if it was the Ottomans trying to reclaim previous lands? On board with that too. In 1940, Noam Goldman, World Jewish Congress, said that if the war in Europe goes on for another year, 1 million of the 2 million Jews in Poland will be dead of starvation or killed by Nazi persecutors. This gets close to the heart of my Churchill criticism. My contention is not that the Third Reich was peaceful or that Germany did not kill Jews. Germany dishonored itself by its conduct on the Eastern Front. What kind of Holocaust revisionism, Nazi revisionism is this? He's like, listen, it was really up because they dishonored themselves. It was a few bad apples. My contention is that the war was not inevitable, that in fact almost no one but Churchill's faction wanted it, and that the atrocity. So the problem is, it's not wrong that Western capitalists, yes, early on, did not want a war with Nazi Germany. There was a period of appeasement. That's true. And if you ask liberals, they'll constantly talk about the appeasement of one side, Stalin, to be like, remember Stalin conducted a deal with Nazi Germany in an effort to like parse out pieces of Poland, and like you know, they're the real evil in this situation. And it's like, again, both sides of this revisionist history operate on the same principles that like dumbass pro-Confederate Republicans operate on when they turn around and say, oh, well, the Republicans, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican actually, sweetie, so Democrats are the real racists. It's like, dude, a lot of history has happened since then, just like the main thing happened after the period of appeasement, both from the West and from the USSR. You can't literally talk about appeasement and not talk about what came after, because what came after is far more consequential. Atrocities against mass murders of Jews, Roma, disabled people, LGBTQ people, etc. by the Nazi regime began as early as 1934. The Nuremberg Laws codified this terror act campaign in 1935. They were not the result of England declaring war in 1939. Yeah, this I think is not only supportable, but also as close to provable as historic counterfactuals can get. Let's continue. The next night, more British bombers flew over Germany. Oh my God, it should be illegal to make a Twitter thread this long. Clip from the Tucker pod instead of reading.
Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. You know, Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for.
Why do you often say England instead of Britain? I don't know. It's just easier
for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it. That when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of.
I think it's kind of terrifying that the position that, like, outside of the Jew thing, Hitler wasn't all that bad has become an increasingly more popular position in the supposed intellectuals of the right. Like, this was originally talked about by Candace Owens. Hitler wanted to make Germany great, but then he became a globalist, and it's like, what the are you talking? What Hitler did in Germany was not great. I mean, it is MAGA, like it was MAGA principles. It's just like, you shouldn't probably use that as like a sentiment that you agree with openly. But it is kind of weird how mainstream seemingly this kind of attitude is getting.
Prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth, that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. You know, you have like letters as early as July, August 1941.
Okay, the underlying premise here is literally like that Jews were a problem that needed to be dealt with. I don't know if he like understands that he's saying that. I don't know if he understands he's saying that, but it's like, they should have not been in the camps to begin with. What the are you saying? That is an insane thing to say. The first question should be, I'm sorry, what do you mean the Jewish problem? Is your issue with the Holocaust a matter of logistics? Like, that's what your problem is with the Holocaust? Is just that, you know, they didn't plan ahead? That's what it is? What a psychotic thing to say out loud. That's insane. He also just said they ended up dying there as if they weren't tortured, starved, and murdered. Yeah, that too.
From commandants of these makeshift camps that they're setting up for these millions of people who are surrendering or people they're rounding up. And so it's 2 months after, a month or two after Barbarossa.
Isn't Hitler universally a bad guy and Churchill's UK the good guys? Okay. Neek Skit, our 15-year-old Mormon. Churchill did a lot of stuff that is objectively Hitlerian as well. However, the big bad in World War II is Adolf Hitler, is obviously Japan, is the Axis powers with Mussolini in Italy. That is correct. This does not mean that like Churchill was a, good guy all around. He was not, okay? Very racist guy, anti-Semitic, but he was pushed to do the right thing in World War II. Now, this guy's issues with Churchill are not the things that I'm talking about. Like, for example, I don't think he gives a single to even present himself as like, I don't know, someone who cares about a ton of Indian people being murdered. Like, he doesn't care about that at all. Like, you could literally just explain, even even if you wanted to like present yourself as like a normal human, you could have just simply said that, you know what I mean? Like as a centrist or something. Anyway, the point is, I see this and I find it to be rather alarming because the original principle was like the double genocide theory, right? Which was Holocaust revisionism by a different name. Like, oh, the USSR also did their genocide and they're communists and they're bad. That's how you open the door to like Holocaust revisionism and also allegiances to fascist ideology. You open the door by saying, well, you know, we're fighting the enemies of fascists. And that's precisely what America did, as a matter of fact. Post-World War II, with the Marshall Plan and with NATO, that's precisely what they did in Western Europe specifically, where they literally were like, who are the greatest killers of communists, trade unionists, and socialists? Oh, those are the fascists that didn't die in World War II. So then, slowly but surely, you build out your allegiances. You create a network of international fascist cells that you never really fully recognize or see as an enemy ever again post-World War II. And then you focus on the real enemy, right? Communism. And that's precisely how liberals have operated. And now we are finally reaching the final chapter of this this weird, well, not weird, but like this important alignment. What is this guy saying? Murat, kapıyı touch. But now we are arriving at like the last stage, the final chapter in this like Holocaust revisionism, where they move past like, well, the socialists were bad too, to just being like, no, the socialists are the only evil. And now they're actually saying the quiet part out loud, where it's like, well, the Nazis weren't bad. That's how it starts. It starts with, well, the socialists or the communists were bad too, to the communists were actually worse. Black Book of Communism. That is the historical text. I'm putting that in air quotes to say that it's like the communists were actually worse. After all, they killed 100 million people, right? And then we move on to the final chapter, which is, well, the Nazis weren't as bad as communists too. Well, the Nazis weren't bad at all. And that's where we're at now. And you saw some examples of this recently before October 7, when the Canadian Parliament literally had an actual like Galicia division, foreign legion for the SS, Ukrainian Nazi get a standing ovation. It's a terrifying prospect because, you know, if you look hard enough and you unmask someone who is an anti-communist, you are inevitably going to find, not surprisingly, a fascist. Like our most pro-Israel media company in Germany, Axel Springer, Hamas are worse than the Nazis. They felt regret in their murder. Yeah. And then retweeting Elon's anti-Semitic bullshit in the same breath. Yeah, no, that's saying Hamas are worse than the Nazis. They felt regret in their murder is just Nazi apologia. That's it. I don't do the inverse of that either. I don't say like, oh, Israelis are worse than the Nazis either. I don't say that either. Some people do. I don't like that either because I think that that is a gross thing to say. I work at a Holocaust museum and you couldn't believe the number of motherfuckers like this coming in and unknowingly defending Hitler because history revisionism and a failure to understand basic geopolitical analysis is always the, well, I heard that wasn't actually true, people. How the f are you a Holocaust denier or revisionist and you go to the Holocaust museum? What the f? That's kind of funny. Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're like, oh, I'm here to learn about this fake thing that didn't happen. What the f? Doing their own research. Jesus Christ.
It was launched. And they're writing back to the high command in Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. We don't have the food to feed these people. And one of them actually says, rather than wait for them all to slowly starve this winter, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now?
Oh, the final solution was the humane one. I didn't even see he got more unhinged.
After Barbarossa was launched. And they're writing back to the high command in Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. We don't have the food to feed these people. And one of them actually says, rather than wait for them all to slowly starve this winter, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now?
I think you should go to jail. Like, I don't know. for any reason. Maybe that, maybe some other reason. That's crazy. He's talking about the Holocaust. He said the humane thing to do once you have enslaved 12 million people, 6 million Jews, like once you've enslaved them and trapped them in the concentration camps and you're slowly torturing them to death, the more humane thing to do is, instead of feeding them, is to just kill them all, like a mercy killing. That's wild. So once again, I have a different solution, which is called not putting Jews into concentration camps. I know, guys, crazy idea. A crazy idea. I know. Radical idea. Don't do that. That was a nut ass thing to just say unashamedly. Did you see who's following this guy? My goat. My goat, dude. Jedediah strikes again. Of course, dude. Common JDW, boys. W's in the chat. If there is an esoteric Nazi out there, JD Vance is in the DMs, starving. I love that it's also both the press office and his own personal private account. He was like, I don't want to miss this on either of my timelines. What next will he say about the Jewish problem and the solution to the Jewish problem, the final one? Elon Musk responds to this Nazi and community knows for the win again. Yeah, this is bullshit for the record, because he literally tweeted the interview and gave it massive prominence and said, interesting. And only after everyone was like, dude, what are you doing? This guy is a literal neo-Nazi, you absolute dingus. He was like, oh, community notes owned him. Yeah, Elon deleted this post and is frantically trying to hide the fact that a few hours ago he believed all the pro-Hitler Nazi bullshit Daryl Cooper was spewing. Very interesting, worth watching, he says. It's fervently anti-Semitic, yet Jingo is for Israel. What a doofus. No, it's not. It's not that stupid. There are more anti-Semitic Christian Zionists out there than there are like anything else. Then there are Jews out there that are pro-Zionist, pro-Israel, or anti-Israel and anti-Zionist. Like, it is the most common position. But we, by way of Nazis and by way of like the Israeli Nazis and the Israeli state, doing a ton of propaganda in either direction, oftentimes saying the exact same thing, think that this is a Jewish conversation. That's why when you listen to anti-Semitic pro-Zionist Christian Zionists, and when you listen to Jewish ultra-Zionists that defend Israel, they say the same shit. They say the identical thing. They literally say Israel and all of its bloodshed is good and it has to happen and it represents the interests of all Jews.
Look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. You know, you have
just magically, they were seemingly put into camps and they just ended up dead. Who knows how? Who could say how? Anyway, this guy's a real psycho, the Daryl guy. I'm glad that we got to see this side of the world, which is a side that I'm not privy to, specifically because I'm no longer on Twitter as much as I used to, unless I'm directly on directly on stream looking at on Twitter. But you know, it's simple. Churchill was a bad guy. True. Churchill was the bad guy. Red flag is correct.